The first punch came faster than Adrian expected, and he barely managed to deflect it before stumbling backward into the padded wall of the gym. "You're thinking too much," Maya said, lowering her hands and tilting her head at him with an expression that somehow managed to be both patient and challenging. "Your mind is analyzing every possible outcome instead of letting your body react. That's how you get hurt." Adrian straightened, rolling his shoulders and trying to ignore the dozen other students in the Friday evening self-defense class, who were now watching him fumble through the basic drill. He was Adrian Castellano, founder and CEO of Castellano Maritime Industries, a shipping empire worth $3 billion. He'd negotiated deals with government officials, stared down corporate raiders, and built a company from nothing in 15 years. Yet here he was, getting schooled by a woman who couldn't be more than 5'6", wearing a simple black tank top and workout pants, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that swung as she moved. "Again," Maya instructed, raising her hands. "Stop thinking about the boardroom. There are no quarterly reports here, just action and reaction." He didn't know how she'd guessed he was thinking about work, but something in her brown eyes suggested she saw more than most people. Adrian reset his stance the way she'd shown them at the beginning of class, and this time when she came at him, something clicked. His forearm came up, redirected her strike, and his other hand moved to where her ribs would be in a real confrontation. "Better," Maya said, and the small smile she gave him felt like winning a multi-million-dollar contract. "See, your instincts are good when you trust them." The class continued for another 40 minutes, and Adrian found himself increasingly aware of Maya's presence. She moved through the room like water, correcting form here, demonstrating a technique there, her voice always calm but commanding attention. When she demonstrated an escape from a wrist grab, partnering with him because he'd been the last to master the previous drill, her skin was warm against his, and she smelled faintly of jasmine and effort. "You're stronger than you think," she said quietly, adjusting his grip. "You don't need to muscle through everything. Use leverage, use momentum. The same way you probably built your business, actually. Smart, not just hard." He looked at her sharply. "What makes you think I have a business?" She released his wrist and stepped back. "You have the posture of someone who sits in meetings. Expensive watch, but you came here in workout clothes that still have the tags in them, which means you bought them specifically for this class. And you move like someone who's used to being in control, but not used to being uncomfortable. So, either high-level executive or trust fund baby who decided to slum it for a night. But you've got calluses on your fingers from actual work, so I'm guessing you earned your money." Adrian blinked. No one had read him that quickly in years. Most people saw what he wanted them to see. "You're observant. It's kind of essential in my line of work," Maya replied. "Knowing when someone's about to attack means noticing the little details everyone else misses." After class ended, Adrian deliberately took his time packing his gym bag. Most of the other students filtered out, thanking Maya as they left. She was tidying up the equipment, stacking pads and checking that the mats were properly aligned. The gym itself was modest, tucked into a building in Brooklyn that had probably been a warehouse once. The exposed brick walls and high ceilings gave it character, and someone had painted an inspiring mural of diverse figures in fighting stances along one wall. "You did well for your first class," Maya said without turning around. "Most people take at least 3 sessions before that last technique clicks." "I'm a quick learner," Adrian replied, then hesitated. This wasn't a business negotiation. He couldn't just present a proposal and expect results. I was wondering if you offer private lessons. She turned, surprise flickering across her features. I do, but they're expensive. $200 an hour. He nearly laughed. He'd paid more for a single bottle of wine at dinner last week. That's fine. I have an unusual situation, and I'd prefer one-on-one instruction. Maya studied him for a long moment, and Adrian had the distinct impression he was being evaluated in ways that had nothing to do with money. What's the unusual situation? I received a credible threat, he admitted. It wasn't exactly a secret, though his security team had kept it quiet. Nothing specific, but enough that my head of security suggested I learn some practical defense skills. I don't want a bodyguard following me everywhere, and I don't want to live in fear. I want to be prepared. Something in Maya's expression softened. Okay, I can work with that. I have slots available Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 7 or Saturday mornings at 9. Which works better? Both, Adrian said. If you're available, she raised an eyebrow. Eager. Practical, he corrected. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing properly. Maya pulled out her phone, scrolled through a calendar, and nodded. All right. Both. We'll start this Tuesday, and Mr. Castellano, Adrian Castellano. She didn't react to his name, which was refreshing. Either she genuinely didn't know who he was, or she was exceptionally good at hiding it. I'm Maya Orozco. I run this place, actually. Orozco Defense Academy. He glanced around the gym with new appreciation. How long have you been teaching? 10 years, but I've been training since I was 8. My father was a Marine, and he believed everyone should know how to protect themselves. He started teaching classes in our garage, and after he passed, I wanted to continue what he built. She smiled, but there was old grief in it. Turned out I was pretty good at it. Adrian recognized the weight of legacy, the pressure of living up to someone else's vision while making it your own. He'd be proud, he found himself saying. This is impressive. Thanks, Maya said, and her smile turned genuine. Anyway, I should close up. I'll see you Tuesday, Adrian. He liked the way his name sounded in her voice, casual and warm, without the careful deference most people used. As he left the gym and climbed into the town car his driver had waiting, Adrian realized he was looking forward to Tuesday more than he'd looked forward to anything in months. His penthouse apartment in Manhattan was exactly what people expected from a billionaire. All glass and steel and views that cost more per month than most people's annual salaries. But walking into it after the gym felt hollow somehow. The expensive furniture and curated art suddenly seeming sterile compared to the warmth of Maya's academy. His head of security, Patrick, was waiting in the living room, his expression disapproving. You went to a public gym without notifying me. I went to a self-defense class, Adrian corrected, pouring himself a scotch from the bar. Which you suggested, if I recall correctly. I suggested private instruction at a vetted facility with proper security measures, Patrick replied. Not a random class in Brooklyn. The academy has cameras, solid locks, and an instructor who's probably more capable than half your team, Adrian said. And I'm continuing with private lessons, so you can vet it all you want before Tuesday. Patrick's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I'll send someone to assess the location. Discreetly, Adrian warned. I don't want her thinking I don't trust her judgment. That earned him a sharp look, but Patrick didn't comment. After he left, Adrian stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering city below. Somewhere out there, Maya was probably heading home, maybe stopping for dinner, living a life that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings or stock prices or the constant pressure of maintaining an empire. He'd built Castellano Maritime from a single cargo ship and a massive loan he'd spent 7 years repaying. His father had been a dock worker, his mother a seamstress, and they'd both died before seeing what their son accomplished. He'd poured everything into the company, every hour, every relationship, every piece of himself. At 35, he was wildly successful and profoundly lonely, though he rarely admitted that even to himself. The threat that had prompted the self-defense classes was real enough. A former business partner, Marcus Vance, had made increasingly hostile statements after a deal went south. Vance had lost everything when Adrian refused to prop up his failing logistics company. And while Adrian maintained he'd made the only reasonable business decision, Vance saw it as betrayal. The threats had been vague but persistent, and though Adrian doubted Vance would actually do anything, Patrick had insisted on precautions. But if Adrian was honest, the threat was almost an excuse. He'd been feeling trapped lately, suffocated by his own success. Learning something new, something physical and immediate, appealed to him in ways he hadn't expected. And Maya appealed to him too, though that was complicated territory he wasn't ready to explore. Tuesday arrived with the kind of spring rain that made the city smell clean for once. Adrian finished a video conference with his Singapore office, changed into his workout clothes, and headed to Brooklyn. This time Patrick had insisted on a security sweep, but true to Adrian's request, they'd been discreet. According to the report, the academy had excellent security. Maya Orozco had zero criminal record and an impeccable reputation, and there were no immediate threats to his safety there. When he arrived, Maya was already in the gym, stretching. She'd traded her tank top for a fitted athletic shirt, and her hair was braided instead of pulled back. She looked up when he entered and smiled. "Right on time," she said. "I like that. Shows respect." "I respect people who are good at what they do," Adrian replied, setting his bag down. "And you clearly are." The compliment seemed to please her, though she hid it quickly. "We're going to start with basics. I know that probably sounds boring, but fundamentals are everything. Most self-defense situations are over in seconds, and you need techniques that work under pressure, when you're scared, and your fine motor control goes out the window." For the next hour, Maya put him through drills that were deceptively simple but physically demanding. Stance work, movement patterns, basic strikes and blocks. She was patient but exacting, correcting the angle of his hip or the position of his elbow, demonstrating when words weren't enough. "You're tense," she observed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Feel this. You're carrying all your stress here. In a real situation, that tension will slow you down." "I'm always tense," Adrian admitted. "Occupational hazard." Maya moved in front of him, her eyes serious. "Then this is about more than just learning to defend yourself. This is about learning to be present in your body, not just in your head. Close your eyes." He hesitated, then obeyed. Maya's voice became his anchor. "Take a breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice where you're holding tension and consciously release it. Your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. You're safe here. This is a space where you can let go of whatever you're carrying and just be." Something in her tone, the steadiness of it, made Adrian's chest tighten. When had anyone last offered him permission to just be? He breathed and felt some of the constant pressure ease. "Good," Maya said softly. "Now open your eyes and let's try that combination again." The difference was remarkable. Without the tension locking his muscles, he moved faster, smoother. Maya's face lit up when he executed the sequence correctly. That's it. See what happens when you trust yourself. They worked until Adrian's shirt was soaked with sweat and his muscles were pleasantly sore. When Maya called time, he was surprised to find that 2 hours had passed instead of 1. I didn't realize we'd gone over, Adrian said, reaching for his water bottle. Maya shrugged. You were in the zone. I wasn't going to interrupt that. Consider it a bonus for being a good student. I'm paying for your time, Adrian insisted, pulling out his wallet. She waved him off. Not necessary. I choose when I go over, which means I choose to donate that time. Don't make it a thing. Adrian studied her, this woman who seemed entirely unbothered by his money or status. Can I at least buy you dinner, as a thank you? Maya paused in the middle of unwrapping her hand wraps. Is that a good idea? Why wouldn't it be? Because you're a student and I'm an instructor, and that dynamic gets messy when you add personal stuff into it, she said bluntly. I've seen it happen. What if I promise it's just dinner? 2 people who both need to eat anyway, having a conversation. She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. There's a Thai place 2 blocks from here. Cheap, amazing food, and I was planning to grab something anyway. You can come if you want, but we split the check. Deal, Adrian agreed, knowing full well he'd find a way to pay for the meal without making it obvious. The restaurant was exactly as advertised, a tiny storefront with 6 tables and a takeout counter. The owner greeted Maya by name, rapid-fire questions in Thai that made her laugh and respond in the same language. They settled at a corner table and Maya ordered for them both without looking at the menu. You speak Thai? Adrian asked. My mom's from Bangkok, Maya explained. I grew up bilingual. Do you speak anything besides English? Spanish and Italian, both business level. Enough Portuguese to get by, Adrian replied, but nothing as fluently as you just demonstrated. Different kinds of learning, Maya said. You learned languages to make deals. I learned because it was how I talked to my grandmother. Different motivations. The food arrived quickly, steaming plates of pad thai and green curry that smelled incredible. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Maya spoke again. So, what does Adrian Castellano actually do? Besides take self-defense classes and negotiate deals in multiple languages. I run a shipping company, he said, which was technically true if massively understated. Maritime cargo, mostly international routes. It's not particularly interesting. Maya snorted. You're a terrible liar. Your eyes light up when you talk about it. What's the interesting part? Adrian found himself telling her about the logistics of moving goods around the world, the puzzle of routes and fuel costs, and weather patterns and international regulations. He told her about the satisfaction of solving problems that seemed impossible, about the first ship he'd bought at 23 with money he'd scraped together, and charm he'd weaponized. My father worked the docks his whole life, Adrian said. Broke his back loading cargo for other people's companies. I remember him coming home exhausted every night, and I swore I'd never be that tired for someone else's dream, so I built my own. That's not boring at all, Maya said. That's the whole American dream thing, right? Build something from nothing. Something like that, Adrian agreed. What about you? You said your father started teaching self-defense. What made you turn it into a full academy? Maya's expression grew thoughtful. After he died, I realized how many people needed what he'd taught me: confidence, awareness, the ability to fight back when necessary. I started with free classes at the community center, and eventually I saved enough to lease the space you saw. It's not fancy, but it's mine. It's impressive, Adrian said honestly. Building something meaningful is harder than building something profitable. You think what you do isn't meaningful, Maya challenged. Your ships move goods that people need. Medicine, food, supplies. That's meaning. No one had ever framed his work that way before. Most people either envied his wealth or judged him for it, but Maya seemed to see the actual value underneath. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. A wall he hadn't known was there developing a crack. They talked until the restaurant owner pointedly started stacking chairs, and even then, Adrian was reluctant to leave. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining under the streetlights. "I can give you a ride home," Adrian offered. Maya glanced at the town car that had appeared seemingly from nowhere, Patrick's doing, and shook her head. "I'm good. Subway's right there, and I like the walk at night. Gives me thinking time." "It's not safe," Adrian protested. She gave him a look that was equal parts amused and exasperated. "Adrian, I teach self-defense for a living. I'm probably the safest person on the subway right now. But thank you for worrying." He watched her walk away, her stride confident and easy, and realized he was in trouble. This was supposed to be simple. Learn to defend himself, check a box, move on. But Maya wasn't simple. She was complex and fascinating and completely unimpressed by the things that usually impressed people. Over the following weeks, their training sessions became the highlight of Adrian's schedule. Maya pushed him physically and mentally, teaching him not just techniques but strategy and awareness. She made him work on 100 small habits, like scanning rooms when he entered them, trusting his instincts about people, staying alert without being paranoid. "Self-defense isn't about being scared," Maya explained during their Thursday session. "It's about being prepared. There's a difference. Scared makes you reactive and sloppy. Prepared makes you calm and effective." They'd progressed beyond basics into more complex scenarios. Maya would attack unexpectedly during drills, forcing him to react rather than think. She taught him how to fight from disadvantaged positions, how to create distance, how to recognize when running was smarter than engaging. "You're getting good at this," she said one Saturday after he'd successfully defended against 3 rapid attacks in a row. "How's it feeling?" "Empowering," Adrian admitted. He was breathing hard, his shirt sticking to his chest, but he felt more alive than he had in months. "Like I'm learning a language I didn't know I was missing." Maya smiled, that rare full smile that made his heart do complicated things. "That's exactly what it is. Body language, the kind that might save your life." They'd fallen into a pattern of having dinner after their sessions, sometimes at the Thai place, sometimes at the taqueria Maya loved, once at a hole-in-the-wall that served the best dumplings Adrian had ever tasted. He learned that she was 29, that she'd studied kinesiology in college, that she volunteered teaching self-defense to domestic violence survivors at a women's shelter. "It's the most important work I do," Maya said over noodles one evening. "These women have had their power taken from them. Teaching them to fight back, even symbolically, helps them reclaim something essential." Adrian made a mental note, and 3 days later had his assistant arrange for a substantial anonymous donation to the shelter. When Maya mentioned that they'd received unexpected funding for new equipment, her eyes were bright with happiness, and Adrian felt warmth spread through his chest at being able to give her that. He was careful not to let his money show too obviously around her. She still believed he ran a moderately successful shipping company, and he found he liked being seen as just Adrian, not Adrian Castellano the billionaire. With Maya, He could be the man learning to fight, the guy who got excited about good dumplings, the person who sometimes stayed up too late because conversation was too good to end. But keeping his world separate from hers was getting harder. 2 months into their training, his company faced a crisis when one of their largest ships was hijacked by pirates off the coast of Somalia. Adrian spent 72 hours coordinating with international authorities, negotiating with intermediaries, and ultimately securing the release of his crew and cargo. He missed both training sessions that week, sending apologetic texts that Maya responded to with simple understanding. When he finally made it back to the academy the following Tuesday, he looked like he'd aged 5 years. Maya took one look at him and shook her head. "We're not training today. You're exhausted." "I'm fine," Adrian insisted, but even he could hear how unconvincing it sounded. "You're dead on your feet," Maya countered. "What happened?" He told her, because he was too tired to maintain pretenses. He told her about the crew members he'd been responsible for, the families he'd had to reassure, the impossible negotiations with people who held all the leverage. He told her about the moment when he'd confirmed everyone was safe, and how he'd gone into his private bathroom and thrown up from relief. Maya listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she said, "Your company is bigger than you told me." "Yeah," Adrian admitted. "Sorry." "How much bigger?" "Castellano Maritime. We're one of the largest international shipping companies in the world." Maya sat back, processing. "So when you said you ran a shipping company, you meant you're actually a billionaire," Adrian finished quietly. "I'm sorry I wasn't upfront about it. Most people treat me differently when they know, and I liked that you didn't." He waited for anger or accusation, but Maya just looked thoughtful. "That's why you have the car that's definitely not a regular car, and why Patrick does security sweeps, and why you never blink at prices." "Yes. And you didn't tell me because." "Because you see me," Adrian said simply. "Not my bank account or my company. You see the guy who gets tense in his shoulders and thinks too much and needs to learn how to be present." "I didn't want to lose that." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not going to lie, I'm a little annoyed you weren't honest, but I get it. And for what it's worth, the money doesn't change my opinion of you. You're still the same person who works hard and asks good questions and actually listens when I explain things." The relief was physical. "So we're okay." "We're okay," Maya confirmed. "But Adrian, you need to take care of yourself. The training isn't worth much if you work yourself into a heart attack." "I know," he said. "It's just hard to step back when people are depending on me." "Who takes care of you when you're depending on you?" Maya asked gently. "No one," was the honest answer. He'd been taking care of himself since his parents died, building and protecting and pushing, never quite letting anyone close enough to share the burden. "Come on," Maya said, standing. "We're going to do something different today." She led him through a series of exercises that were more yoga than self-defense, focused on breathing and stretching and releasing tension. Her voice was soothing, guiding him through movements that felt medicinal. By the end, Adrian felt more relaxed than he had in days. "Better?" Maya asked. "Much," Adrian admitted. "Thank you." "That's what friends do," Maya said, and the word friends landed with unexpected weight. Was that what they were? Adrian wanted more than friendship, wanted it with an intensity that sometimes kept him awake at night. But Maya had been clear about boundaries, and he respected that. So he'd take friendship if that was what she offered, even if every smile from her felt like sunlight after years in the dark. They went to dinner, and Maya told him stories about her most challenging students, making him laugh until his sides hurt. When they parted ways outside the restaurant, she surprised him by pulling him into a brief hug. "I'm glad you made it back safely," she said. "Your crew too, obviously, but also you." Adrian held onto that warmth all the way home. Summer arrived, bringing heat that made the city shimmer and training sessions that left them both drenched. Adrian's skills had progressed to the point where Maya had to work to challenge him, and there was a new ease between them, built on months of shared effort and conversation. "You're ready for scenario training," Maya announced one evening. "Next week, I'm bringing in some friends to help. We're going to simulate real situations, see how you react under pressure." The following Thursday, Adrian arrived to find 3 other people in the gym, 2 men and a woman, all with the same capable air that Maya carried. She introduced them as fellow instructors and former military. For 2 hours, they put him through hell. Surprise attacks, multiple opponents, restricted spaces, scenarios that required quick thinking as much as physical skill. Adrian got thrown, pinned, overwhelmed, and each time he got back up and tried again. "Enough," Maya finally called. "Good work, everyone." The other instructors congratulated him on his performance before leaving. Adrian collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Maya crouched beside him, offering water. "You did well, really well." "I got my ass kicked," Adrian pointed out. "You adapted, you didn't give up, and you landed some solid counters," Maya corrected. "Against trained fighters, that's impressive. In a real situation against someone who isn't trained, you'd be more than capable of protecting yourself." "Thanks to you," Adrian said, looking at her directly. "You're an incredible teacher, Maya." She held his gaze, and something shifted in the air between them. Adrian saw the moment she recognized it too, awareness flickering in her eyes before she looked away. "We should celebrate," she said, standing quickly. "There's a street fair a few blocks from here. Food trucks, live music, the whole thing. You interested?" The fair was crowded and vibrant, music spilling from a stage at one end, while dozens of vendors sold everything from tacos to handmade jewelry. Maya moved through it with obvious delight, stopping to try samples and chat with vendors she knew. Adrian bought them both ice cream from a truck decorated with murals of tropical beaches, and they found a spot to sit on the edge of a fountain. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled like grilled meat and summer. "This is nice," Adrian said. "I don't do things like this often enough." "Street fairs?" Maya asked. "Anything that isn't work," he clarified. "I've spent the last 15 years building the company, and somewhere along the way I forgot to build a life outside of it." Maya licked melting ice cream from her cone thoughtfully. "Is that why you seemed so lost when you first came to class? Like you were going through motions but not really present?" "Probably," Adrian admitted. "I was successful but not happy, and I didn't know how to fix it. Then I met you, and things started feeling different." It was more honest than he'd intended, but the setting sun and the music and the way Maya looked in the golden light had loosened his usual control. Maya was quiet, watching the crowd. "Adrian, I need to be honest with you about something." His stomach dropped. "Okay, I like you," she said carefully. "More than I should, given that you're my student. But there's a line there that I can't cross while I'm teaching you. It wouldn't be professional and it wouldn't be fair to you." "What if I stopped being your student?" Adrian asked. "Are you really ready to stop training?" Maya challenged. "Or would you just be saying that to pursue something else?" He considered that. "I'd like to keep training." "You're right that I'm not finished learning. But I'd also like to take you on an actual date, where we both acknowledge that it's a date and not just dinner between teacher and student. Maya looked at him then, really looked, and Adrian felt seen in ways that were both terrifying and exhilarating. What if it doesn't work out? What if we try this and it's a disaster? What if it's not? Adrian countered. What if it's exactly what we're both looking for? You're very confident for a man who couldn't block a basic strike 3 months ago, Maya said, but she was smiling. You taught me to trust my instincts, Adrian reminded her. My instincts say that whatever this is between us is worth exploring. Maya finished her ice cream, clearly thinking. The music from the fair washed over them, something upbeat and hopeful. Finally, she sighed. Okay, here's the deal. We finish out your training program properly. I planned 8 months total, so we've got 2 months left. During that time, we keep things professional. But after that, if you still want to take me on a real date, I'm saying yes in advance. It wasn't what Adrian wanted to hear, but he understood her reasoning. And knowing that Maya felt the same attraction he did, that she was willing to wait for the right time, made the next 2 months feel manageable. Deal, he said, offering his hand. Maya shook it, her grip firm and sure. Deal. Those final 2 months were sweet torture. Their training sessions remained focused and professional, but there was an undercurrent now, an awareness that both of them acknowledged without acting on. Sometimes their eyes would meet during a drill and hold just a fraction too long. Sometimes Maya's touch while correcting his form would linger. Sometimes Adrian would catch her watching him with an expression that made his pulse race. They still had dinner after sessions, but the conversations went deeper. Maya told him about her divorce 3 years earlier, a marriage that had fallen apart when her ex-husband couldn't accept that she was stronger and more ambitious than he was. He wanted a wife who would stay home and let him be the big man, Maya explained. But that's never been who I am. I need a partner, not someone I have to shrink myself for. Adrian understood. He'd had relationships over the years, but nothing serious. Nothing that survived the demands of building his company. The women he dated wanted the billionaire lifestyle, the parties and galas and designer, everything. None of them had wanted the man underneath. He told Maya about the loneliness of success, how he'd achieved everything he'd set out to do, and found the victory hollow without someone to share it with. He told her about his fear of being wanted only for his money, of never knowing if someone loved him or the life he could provide. That's why I didn't tell you immediately who I was, Adrian said. I needed to know you saw me, not dollar signs. I do see you, Maya assured him. The money is part of your story, but it's not the interesting part. The interesting part is how you got there, and who you are when you're not in CEO mode. They navigated the end of summer together, falling into an easy rhythm that felt right. Adrian made space in his schedule for training and dinners with Maya, and discovered that his company didn't collapse without his constant attention. His executive team was more capable than he'd given them credit for, and delegating freed him to focus on strategy instead of tactics. Maya pushed him through increasingly complex training, until he moved with a confidence that felt natural. She taught him to fight dirty when necessary, to use improvised weapons, to read environments for tactical advantages. But more than that, she taught him to trust himself, to believe he was capable of protecting what mattered. The final training session arrived on a Thursday evening in late August. The gym felt different somehow, charged with significance. Maya put him through his paces one last time, testing everything they'd worked on over 8 months. When she finally called time, she was grinning. You've officially graduated. I have nothing left to teach you. I doubt that, Adrian said, breathing hard but smiling. You'll always have something to teach me. Maya's expression softened. How about we find out? Saturday night, 7 o'clock, that date you wanted. Adrian's heart kicked into overdrive. Yes. Absolutely yes. Good, Maya said. And Adrian, don't plan anything elaborate. No fancy restaurants or helicopters or billionaire nonsense. Just you and me, figuring out if this thing between us is as good as I think it might be. Saturday took forever to arrive. Adrian changed his outfit 3 times, unsure how to dress for a date where he wasn't supposed to be billionaire Adrian. He finally settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt. Nice, but not ostentatious. He picked Maya up at her apartment, a walk-up in Brooklyn that she decorated with colorful art and plants that somehow thrived despite the questionable lighting. She wore a sundress that showed off her toned arms, her hair loose around her shoulders. You look beautiful, Adrian said honestly. You clean up pretty well yourself, Maya replied. So what's the plan? I thought we'd start with a walk across the Brooklyn Bridge, then there's a night market in Dumbo with food and music. Low-key, public, easy to leave if you decide I'm terrible company. Maya laughed. Smart strategy, let's go. The evening was perfect. They walked across the bridge as the sun set, the Manhattan skyline glittering ahead of them. The night market was crowded and lively, vendors selling everything from Korean barbecue to handmade pasta to elaborate desserts. They shared plates and tried things neither of them had tasted before, laughing when Maya got sauce on her nose and Adrian nearly choked on wasabi. Tell me something I don't know about you, Maya said as they sat on a bench overlooking the water, splitting a cannoli. Adrian thought about it. I'm scared of what happens next, he admitted. I've spent so long focused on building the company that I don't know how to build something personal. What if I'm bad at this? Then we'll figure it out together, Maya said simply. Relationships are like self-defense, actually. It's about being present, trusting your instincts, and not being afraid of being vulnerable. You make it sound simple. It's not, she admitted. But it's worth trying for. You're worth trying for. Adrian turned to look at her, this woman who'd somehow slipped past every defense he'd built. I've never met anyone like you, Maya. You make me want to be better. You are better, she said. You just needed to realize it. The man you were 8 months ago was so locked up in his own head he couldn't see what was right in front of him. But you've changed. You're more present, more open. That's not because of me. That's because you chose to do the work. He kissed her then, unable to resist any longer. It was gentle at first, a question more than a demand, but when Maya kissed him back, her hand coming up to cup his jaw, it deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Maya was smiling. Okay, that was worth the wait. Just okay, Adrian challenged. Fine, it was spectacular, she admitted. Happy. Getting there, Adrian said, pulling her close again. They stayed by the water until the market started shutting down, reluctant to let the evening end. When Adrian finally walked Maya back to her apartment, she invited him up for coffee, and they ended up on her couch talking until 2 in the morning. I should let you sleep, Adrian said eventually, though moving was the last thing he wanted. Probably, Maya agreed, but she was leaning against his shoulder, looking as reluctant as he felt. Same time next week. How about tomorrow? Adrian suggested. Maya laughed. Eager, I like it. Tomorrow works. Their relationship unfolded over the following months with an ease that surprised them both. Adrian had expected complications, drama, the usual relationship turbulence. Instead, Being with Maya felt natural, like finding a missing piece he hadn't known was gone. She kept him grounded when work stress threatened to overwhelm him, reminding him to breathe and stay present. He supported her ambitions for the academy, using his business expertise to help her develop expansion plans and secure better facilities. They learned each other's rhythms, when to push and when to give space, when to talk and when to simply be together. Adrian introduced Maya to his world gradually. She met his executive team at a company barbecue, charming them with her directness and genuine interest in their work. She accompanied him to a charity gala, looking stunning in a simple black dress, and spent the evening talking to everyone from board members to catering staff with the same warmth. "Your girlfriend is remarkable," his CFO told him. "She asked intelligent questions about our African routes and then helped the event coordinator with a crisis in the kitchen. Who does that?" "Someone who sees people," Adrian replied, watching Maya laugh with a group of younger employees. "Not positions or titles, just people." Maya introduced him to her world too. He started helping with classes at the academy, using his experience to assist beginners. He met her friends, a diverse group of instructors and activists and artists who accepted him not as a billionaire but as Maya's partner. He volunteered at the women's shelter where Maya taught, holding mats and offering encouragement. "You're good at this," Maya said after one session, watching him talk to a woman who'd been too scared to participate fully. "You make them feel safe." "I learned from the best," Adrian replied. 6 months into their relationship, the threat that had originally brought Adrian to Maya's academy materialized in an unexpected way. Marcus Vance, the former business partner who'd been making threats, showed up at Adrian's office building demanding a meeting. Security detained him, but not before he'd made a scene in the lobby, screaming about betrayal and revenge. Adrian felt surprisingly calm during the confrontation. All of Maya's training kicked in, reading Vance's body language, maintaining safe distance, staying alert without being aggressive. Patrick and the security team handled the situation, and Vance was escorted away with a restraining order being filed. But the incident shook Adrian more than he wanted to admit. That evening at Maya's apartment, he found himself pacing. What if he'd gotten past security? What if he'd had a weapon? What if— "Adrian," Maya interrupted gently, "you're catastrophizing." "That's anxiety talking, not reality." "But it could have been reality," Adrian insisted. "And if something happened to me, I'd what?" Maya asked, standing to face him. "Fall apart." "Stop living." "Adrian, I'm strong enough to handle whatever life throws at me. But nothing's going to happen to you because you're trained, you're aware, and you have excellent security." "You can't control everything." He stopped pacing, looking at her. "I love you," he said suddenly. "I know we haven't said it yet, but I do. I love you, and the thought of anything threatening us, makes me crazy." Maya's expression melted into something tender. "I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere, neither are you. We're both fighters, remember. We don't back down from threats." She pulled him into a hug, and Adrian held on, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. This woman had taught him so much more than self-defense. She'd taught him how to be vulnerable, how to trust, how to build something real. "Marry me," he said into her hair. Maya pulled back, eyes wide. "What?" "Marry me," Adrian repeated. "I know it's fast and I don't have a ring and this is possibly the worst proposal in history, but I don't want to wait. I've spent too much of my life waiting for the right time, the right circumstances. You are the right person, and that's all that matters." Maya stared at him, and for a horrible moment Adrian thought he'd miscalculated. Then she started laughing, tears streaming down her face. "You're insane," she said. "This is insane. We've been dating for 6 months." "Is that a no?" Adrian asked, his heart sinking. "It's a yes, you ridiculous man," Maya said, still laughing and crying. "It's a yes. But you owe me a proper proposal with a ring and planning and everything." Relief and joy flooded through him. "I can do that. I'll do it right, I promise." "Good," Maya said, then kissed him thoroughly. "And for the record, I would have said yes even without the proper proposal. You had me at the terrible blocking in that first class." Adrian laughed, kissing her again. "You had me when you told me to stop thinking so much." They spent the rest of the night planning a future that suddenly seemed bright and clear. Maya wanted a small wedding, close friends and family, nothing ostentatious. Adrian wanted whatever made her happy. They talked about combining their lives practically, about whether Maya would keep the academy or expand it, about where they'd live, and how they'd balance his travel schedule with her teaching. "I don't want to be the wife who gives up her career," Maya said seriously. "That's what destroyed my first marriage." "I don't want you to give up anything," Adrian assured her. "Your work matters. The academy matters. We'll figure out how to make it all work together." True to his word, Adrian planned a proper proposal 2 weeks later. He took Maya back to the Brooklyn Bridge, where they'd had their first date, this time at sunrise when the city was quiet. He'd arranged for a violinist to play softly nearby, and when he got down on one knee with a ring he'd had custom designed, Maya was crying before he even finished asking the question. "Yes," she said, pulling him up to kiss her. "Always yes." They married 4 months later in a ceremony that perfectly blended their worlds. The wedding took place at a renovated warehouse space in Brooklyn, decorated simply with lights and flowers. Maya's students formed an honor guard with training staffs, and Adrian's executive team mingled with instructors and activists and dock workers' families. It was chaotic and beautiful and exactly right. Adrian's vows included thanking Maya for teaching him to trust himself, for showing him that strength wasn't about never being vulnerable, but about being brave enough to be open. Maya's vows included thanking Adrian for seeing her, for supporting her dreams, for proving that partnership meant elevation, not compromise. "You both learned to fight for yourselves," the officiant said, a friend of Maya's who'd served in the military with her father. "Now you'll fight for each other, and that's the strongest defense there is." They honeymooned in Thailand, visiting Maya's family and exploring the country where her mother had been born. Adrian learned more Thai, embarrassing himself repeatedly but making Maya laugh. They trained at a Muay Thai gym in Bangkok, sparring with local fighters and learning new techniques. They ate street food and explored temples, and stayed in a small beach bungalow where the only sound was waves. "I could get used to this," Adrian said one evening watching the sunset from their private beach. "Retirement," Maya teased. "Balance," Adrian corrected. "Work matters, but this matters more, us. Building a life, not just a company." When they returned to New York, they moved into a new home together, a townhouse in Brooklyn that gave them both space and privacy without the sterile feel of Adrian's old penthouse. Maya kept the academy and began planning an expansion that would add a second location focused specifically on programs for at-risk youth. Adrian stayed involved with his company but delegated more, trusting his team and making time for what mattered. A year into their marriage, Maya discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a surprise to both of them, and Adrian found himself experiencing fear and excitement in equal measure. "What if I'm terrible at this?" he asked, his hand on Maya's still flat stomach. "Then we'll figure it out together," Maya said, echoing what she'd told him on their first date. "We're a team, remember?" Their daughter arrived on a snowy December morning, red-faced and screaming and absolutely perfect. They named her Alina, after Adrian's mother, and she had Maya's eyes and a grip that promised future strength. Adrian discovered that fatherhood was the most challenging thing he'd ever done, more exhausting than building a business, and more rewarding than any success he'd achieved. He learned to function on no sleep, to change diapers with one hand while taking conference calls, to soothe a crying baby while Maya caught a few precious hours of rest. "You're good at this," Maya said one night, watching him rock Alina to sleep. "I had a good teacher," Adrian replied. "You taught me that being present is everything." They navigated the challenges of new parenthood together, supporting each other through exhaustion and frustration and moments of pure joy. Maya went back to teaching part-time when Alina was 3 months old, and Adrian adjusted his schedule to be home more. They hired help when they needed it, but tried to be as hands-on as possible. Alina grew into a curious, fearless toddler who loved roughhousing with her father and learning basic movements from her mother. By the time she was 2, she could execute a surprisingly effective palm strike and knew how to fall without hurting herself. "We're raising a warrior," Adrian said proudly, watching Alina practice her fighting stance in the living room. "We're raising someone who can protect herself and stand up for others," Maya corrected. "That's better than a warrior." The academy continued to grow under Maya's guidance. The second location opened to huge community support, offering programs for kids who couldn't afford traditional martial arts training. Adrian's business connections helped secure funding and equipment, while Maya's vision and teaching made it successful. Local news covered the opening, featuring Maya as a community leader and entrepreneur. "How does it feel to be famous?" Adrian teased, watching the broadcast. "Weird," Maya admitted. "But worth it if it helps more kids learn what I'm teaching." Adrian's company continued to thrive, but he'd learned to define success differently. Yes, profits mattered, but so did employee satisfaction and sustainable practices and ethical operations. He implemented programs that invested in his workforce, improved working conditions on ships, and partnered with environmental organizations to reduce the company's carbon footprint. "You're becoming idealistic in your old age," his CFO joked during a meeting about the new initiatives. "I'm becoming a father who wants his daughter to inherit a better world," Adrian corrected. "There's a difference." 5 years into their marriage, sitting at dinner with Alina chattering away about her day at preschool, Adrian looked at Maya and felt overwhelming gratitude. This woman had changed everything. She taught him to fight, yes, but more importantly, she taught him to love without fear, to be vulnerable without being weak, to build a life that mattered beyond balance sheets and quarterly reports. "What are you thinking about?" Maya asked, noticing his expression. "How you saved me," Adrian said simply. Maya reached across the table to take his hand. "We saved each other." That's how partnerships work. Alina, oblivious to the moment, announced that she wanted to show Daddy her new kick. They moved to the living room, where their daughter demonstrated with serious concentration, and Adrian caught her when she inevitably lost balance, both of them laughing. Later, after Alina was asleep and they were alone in their bedroom, Maya curled against Adrian's side. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The before. When it was just work and success and building the empire." Never, Adrian said honestly. That version of me was successful but hollow. This version has you and Alina and a life that actually means something. I'd choose this every single time. Good answer, Maya murmured, already half asleep. Adrian held her, listening to her breathing even out, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. He'd walked into that self-defense class, expecting to learn how to protect himself from physical threats. Instead, he'd learned something far more valuable. He'd learned to protect his heart by opening it, to find strength in vulnerability, to build something that mattered with someone who saw him completely. The threats that had originally brought him to Maya's academy had faded into insignificance. Vance had eventually moved away, his anger burned out. The business challenges continued, but Adrian faced them with the confidence of someone who knew what really mattered. Physical danger was always possible, but he had the skills to handle it and the awareness to avoid most situations before they escalated. More importantly, he had Maya. His partner, his teacher, his love. Together they'd built something neither of them could have created alone, a life full of purpose and connection, and the daily work of choosing each other. On their 7th anniversary, Adrian took Maya back to the gym where they'd met. It was late evening, the space empty and echoing. "Remember when I couldn't block a basic strike?" Adrian asked, standing in the center of the mat. "Remember when you were so tense I thought you'd snap?" Maya countered. They moved through a slow sparring sequence, not really fighting but dancing through techniques they both knew by heart. It felt like meditation, like coming home. "Thank you," Adrian said when they finished, "for seeing me, for teaching me, for loving me." "Thank you for being brave enough to walk through that door," Maya replied, "for trusting the process, for building this life with me." They kissed in the empty gym, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way and created something beautiful from that meeting. Outside, the city hummed with life. At home, their daughter slept peacefully. And here, in this space where everything had begun, Adrian and Maya held each other and knew they were exactly where they belonged. Years later, when Alina asked how her parents had met, they'd tell her about the self-defense class, about teaching and learning, about the slow building of trust and love. They'd tell her that sometimes the best things in life come from being brave enough to try something new, to be vulnerable, to let someone see you completely. But mostly they'd tell her that love, real love, isn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's about showing up every day and choosing each other, about supporting dreams and weathering challenges, about building something together that's stronger than anything you could build alone. Adrian had learned to defend himself that first night in Maya's academy. But in the months and years that followed, he'd learned something far more important. He'd learned that the heart he'd been guarding so carefully didn't need walls and defenses. It needed to be offered freely to someone worthy of protecting it, someone who would guard it not by locking it away but by cherishing it, challenging it, helping it grow. Maya had taught him that true strength wasn't about fighting alone. It was about finding someone to fight beside, someone who made you braver and better and more fully yourself. It was about building a partnership that could weather any storm because it was founded on trust, respect, and a love that deepened with every shared challenge. In the end, Adrian had learned to protect his heart by opening it completely. And that, more than any self-defense technique, was the lesson that changed his life. They continued to grow together, their love evolving as all lasting love does. There were challenges, of course. Disagreements about parenting approaches, stress from work, the ordinary friction of two strong people building a life together. But they faced each challenge the way Maya had taught Adrian to face physical threats, with awareness, presence, and a refusal to back down from what mattered. When Alina started school, she naturally gravitated toward activities that combined her parents' influences. She joined the youth program at Maya's academy, excelling quickly under her mother's patient instruction. But she also showed an aptitude for the strategic thinking that had made Adrian successful, asking thoughtful questions about why techniques worked and how they could be improved. "She's going to be formidable," Maya said proudly, watching their daughter lead a group of younger students through a drill. "She has an incredible role model," Adrian replied, pulling Maya close. The academy expanded again, and then again, until Maya's vision of accessible self-defense education had spread to 5 locations across New York. Adrian's business continued to thrive under his more balanced leadership approach, proving that success and ethics weren't mutually exclusive. They traveled as a family when possible, exposing Alina to different cultures and perspectives. But the best moments were the quiet ones. Sunday mornings with pancakes and the newspaper. Evening walks through their neighborhood. Bedtime stories where Alina would act out the adventure with dramatic kicks and punches. Nights when Maya and Adrian would finally have the house to themselves, talking and laughing and loving each other with the ease of people who'd chosen well and knew it. "Do you remember what you said that first night?" Maya asked one evening, curled up on their couch while rain pattered against the windows. "When you asked about private lessons." "I said I wanted to learn to protect myself," Adrian recalled. "You said you didn't want to live in fear," Maya corrected. "And you don't. You're brave, Adrian. Not because you can fight, but because you're willing to be vulnerable, to love fully, to show up for the people who matter. That's real courage." Adrian kissed her temple. "I learned it from you." "We learned it from each other," Maya said. "That's the whole point." And it was. The whole point of their story, of any love story worth telling, was two people choosing to be brave together. Choosing to fight for each other and with each other, building something that neither could create alone. Adrian had walked into that self-defense class looking for safety, and he'd found something far better. He'd found home in the form of a woman who saw him completely and loved him anyway. They grew old together, their love deepening with time. Alina grew up strong and capable, eventually running one of the academy locations herself while pursuing a degree in social work. Adrian and Maya became grandparents, teaching a new generation the lessons they'd learned. And through it all, they remained partners in the truest sense, supporting each other's dreams and facing life's challenges side by side. On their 50th anniversary, surrounded by family and friends in the same warehouse space where they'd married, Adrian looked at Maya and saw the young woman who'd first taught him to defend himself, and the incredible person she'd become. Her hair was silver now, her hands marked by decades of training, but her eyes held the same fierce intelligence and warmth that had first captured him. "I love you," he said simply. "I know," Maya replied with a smile. "You tell me every day." "And I'll keep telling you," Adrian promised, "for as long as we have." They danced in the center of the space, surrounded by everyone they loved, and Adrian thought about the journey that had brought them here. He'd been so lost when he first walked into her class, successful but empty, guarded and alone. Maya had taught him to open up, to trust, to be present. She taught him that the heart he'd been protecting so carefully didn't need armor. It needed to be shared with someone worthy of the gift. And in sharing his heart with Maya, in building this beautiful life together, Adrian had found everything he'd been searching for: love, partnership, purpose, joy. The wealth and success that had once defined him now seemed like footnotes to the real story, which was simply this: two people who'd found each other and chosen to build something extraordinary together. As the celebration continued around them, Adrian held Maya close and felt nothing but gratitude. For that first class, for every lesson that followed, for the courage to pursue what his heart knew was right. For this woman who'd changed everything, who'd shown him that true strength came from openness, that real protection came from love. He'd learned to guard his heart by giving it away completely. And in doing so, he'd found the greatest treasure of his life. Not the billions in his bank account or the empire he'd built, but this: a love that lasted, a partnership that strengthened over time, a life rich with meaning and connection. Maya looked up at him, her eyes shining with love and understanding, and Adrian knew she was thinking the same thing. They'd both been searching when they met, both needing something they couldn't name. And together, they'd found it. Not just love, but the kind of deep, abiding partnership that makes everything else possible. "Thank you," Adrian whispered. "For what?" Maya asked. "For everything," he said. "For seeing me. For teaching me. For choosing me every single day." Maya smiled, that beautiful smile that still made his heart race after 50 years. "Thank you for being brave enough to let me." They kissed, surrounded by the life they'd built and the love they'd nurtured. Two people who'd learned that the best defense is an open heart. And as the music played and their family celebrated around them, Adrian and Maya held each other close, knowing they'd found something rare and precious. A love story for the ages, built on trust, respect, and the daily choice to fight not against each other, but for each other always.